All right, we're on Nehemiah 7, and so last week Phil got us through chapter 6, and we saw that the wall was completed, and completed in remarkably short time. You also saw some continued opposition, and really some unique attempts by the evil one to attack Nehemiah and manipulate certain situations and to threaten him, and so we continue now through chapter 7. And again, I just want to go through the first 4 verses of chapter 7 rather quickly. What's here is fairly self-explanatory, and then spend again the bulk of our time on the remainder of the chapter. So in chapter 7, verse 1, now when the wall had been built, that's what we looked at last week. When the wall had been built, and I had set up the doors, and the gatekeepers, the singers, and the Levites had been appointed, I gave my brother Hanani and Hananiah, the governor of the castle, charge over Jerusalem, for he was a more faithful and God-fearing man than many. And I said to them, let not the gates of Jerusalem be opened until the sun is hot, and while they are still standing guard, let them shut and bar the doors. Appoint guards from among the inhabitants of Jerusalem, some at their guard posts and some in the front of their own homes. The city was wide and large, but the people within it were few, and no houses had been built. So the wall is completed, and now Nehemiah is making efforts. His goal right now in these verses is to protect the people of God. So he still has their protection, their safety in mind. So he says, the wall had been built. I set up the doors and the gatekeepers and the singers, and the Levites had been appointed. What were they appointed for? They were appointed as essentially guard duty, safety team to make sure the people of God were protected. And so he takes the gatekeepers, the Levites, the singers, and he puts them in place to guard the city. So the temple already had a set of guards. The Levites served in that capacity in some manner, some measure as well. And so circumstances and the timing of it, Nehemiah says, let's take this guard that we already have on duty and let's temporarily put them in the position of guarding on the walls until, we'll see in just a moment, a more permanent guard can be put in place, and then they can go back to where they're supposed to be. And so the wall had been built. I had set up the doors, and the gatekeepers, the singers, and the Levites had been appointed. And I gave my brother Hanani and Hananiah, the governor of the castle, charge over Jerusalem, for he was a more faithful and God-fearing man than many. So here you have Nehemiah sort of relinquishing some responsibility, which Nehemiah can't do everything. So it sort of harkens back to Jethro's wisdom to Moses back in Exodus. You've got to let go of some things. You've got to delegate some responsibilities. So Nehemiah is about to, as we're going to see in a moment, he's about to shift his focus from the rebuilding of the walls to the rebuilding of God's people. That's where his focus is now turning. And so he's letting some of that other responsibility go, and he appoints his brother, who we saw in the first chapter, Hanani, who had alerted him to the condition of the city of Jerusalem and the walls and how they were broken down. He appoints Hanani, his brother, and then another guy by the name of Hananiah, who was the governor of the castle. He puts them in charge. And so this Hananiah was the administrator of the castle, and the castle there was essentially what's called the Tower of Hananel, which was part of a defensive measure of the temple. You had this sort of tower there that served as a lookout, and so this guy is sort of the one who's over that part of the Temple Mount and that structure, and so he gets put in this position of delegated this position of authority to help Hanani in taking some of the responsibility off of Nehemiah as he shifts his focus to rebuilding the people of God. And what qualified Hananiah, according to Nehemiah, was that he was a more faithful and God-fearing man than many. That should, for each of us, should be how we would want to be defined. when people hear your name or my name, the thing that they should think of, you know what, that's a more faithful and God-fearing man or God-fearing woman than most. That's what we should aspire for. That's what our goal should be, in a sense, in our walk with the Lord. And so, because of the spiritual maturity of this person, Nehemiah places Hananiah as one of those, in conjunction with Hanani, over the people and sort of delegates some of that authority and responsibility to them. And I said to them, verse 3, let not the gates of Jerusalem be opened until the sun is hot, and while they are still standing guard, let them shut and bar the doors. So here Nehemiah instructs them, basically, again, it's a measure of protection. He's saying, first of all, make sure you don't open the gates until the sun is way up and everyone's up and alert and going about their day. Don't open them too early. And then, conversely, don't close them too late. While the guard's still on duty, make sure you go ahead and shut the doors of the gates, again, as a protective measure to just better be safe than sorry, right? So let's make sure everything is open when it's safe for it to be open, and when it's not as safe for the gates to be open, let's make sure they're closed. And so that's the point behind that instruction or that command. And then he says, appoint guards from among the inhabitants of Jerusalem, some at their guard post, and some in front of their own homes. So here's the more permanent sort of guard duty or protection that Nehemiah wants to be put in place. And he delegates that to Hananiah and Hananiah. He said, I want you to make sure you install a more permanent team of security, because the gatekeepers and the temple servants, and the Levites, they can't serve in this capacity in perpetuity. You know, they've got to get back to their responsibilities and where they're supposed to be. So you appoint a more permanent guard to stand guard of their homes and to stand guard on the wall and to guard the people of God in the city of God. Then we get to verse 4. Nehemiah says, the city was wide and large, but the people within it were few, and no houses have been built. Verse 4 is what we call in Scripture a hinge verse. So it's turning, if you will, the door to the second half of the book of Nehemiah. And it's setting up for us the remainder of chapter 7 and everything we're going to see in just a moment that's happening in the rest of the chapter. And what Nehemiah tells us about the city in verse 4 is that the city is wide and large, so it's spacious. It's not as big as it was, in a sense, pre-captivity. And there definitely aren't as many people as there were pre-captivity. And so in relationship to the limited population and the size of the city, it sort of felt like a ghost town. Because before the exile, some guessed that there was probably 240,000 people that are in the city. And now, before Nehemiah does what he does here in chapter 7, and then actually gets it implemented in chapter 11, at this time, some speculate that actually living in the city proper, there were probably at least less than 5,000 people. Everyone else was living around the city. So when they returned, they didn't live in the city, and Nehemiah tells us why. No houses have been rebuilt. So there wasn't any place for them to call home there. And we saw also, there's these issues of security measures as well, and so they're living on the outskirts of the city, and there's few people there. No houses have been rebuilt, and Nehemiah now is going to address that issue in the remainder of chapter 7, which is where we're going to spend the rest of our time. Now, when you get to these verses, and Phil sort of passes these passages along to me, chapters of just names. Just name after name after name. And he said, we are. And and he said it's just coincidence, which I don't. We're Christians. We don't believe in coincidence, right? Okay. We believe in providence and I don't know, the other manipulation or something, or not good thoughts towards other people. No. And so he's passed this responsibility on to me to deal with chapter 7 and all of these names. And it is a chapter full of names, but I want us to see by the time we're done tonight that it has a purpose, and a pretty remarkable purpose, or purposes, as we walk through the passage together. The reality is when we get to this section, beginning at verse 5, we've ended the first half of Nehemiah, and now we're entering the second half of Nehemiah, which is we're gone from rebuilding the walls to now rebuilding the people. And when you get here to all these names and all these hard things to pronounce, we come to a passage that, if we're honest, we might be real likely just to skip on and jump into chapter 8. So let's not act like we're all super spiritual, okay? Like you don't do that in your quiet time. I do that in my quiet time, okay? If there's a passage on my daily reading plan and it's just a bunch of names, I'm probably going to speed read through those names if I read them at all. And that's sort of how we can be. We can look at passages like this, and it's sort of like a, streaming TV. We just fast forward, just keep hitting the button until we get to something that's more interesting or that we actually want to give our time to. The only problem with that is God doesn't. I don't think He's pleased with that, because He tells us in 2 Timothy 3:16 something very true about His Word. All Scripture is inspired by God, and all Scripture is profitable and good for teaching and correction and rebuke and training up the man and woman of God, for us to be the kind of people that God has called us to be. And so when we come to passages like this and we hit the fast forward button, what we're really saying is, I don't really believe in 2 Timothy 3:16, because I don't want to give my time to this passage. And I think God put it in here for us to give time to it, because it has an importance to it. And we're going to see what that is tonight. And so, since 2 Timothy 3:16 is true, all Scripture is profitable, inspired by God, I want us to actually take the time to read, before we get into what it all means, I want us to take the time to read the rest of the chapter. Because God put it in there for a reason. And part of that reason was to honor these people and their names and their families and the sacrifices they made. So I think we owe it to these people the way God intended for us to honor them and honor their faithfulness. So I want to read through it. I'm going to do my best with the names. If I get it wrong, you will have no idea, because you don't know how to pronounce it either, okay? So we'll just all pretend like I'm pronouncing it correctly, all right? So let me read through it as quickly as I can. Then my God, verse 5, put it in my heart to assemble the nobles and the officials and the people to be enrolled by genealogy, and I found the book of the genealogy of those who came up at the first, and I found written in it, these were the people of the province who came up out of the captivity of those exiles, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried into exile. They returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his town. They came with Zerubbabel, Jeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Remiah, Nehemiah, Mordecai, Bilshan, Mishpereth, Bigvai, Nehum, and Bana. I thought so too, but we'll see. The number of the men of the people of Israel, the sons of Parosh, 2,172. The sons of Shephatiah, 372. The sons of Era, 652. The sons of Pahath Moab, namely the sons of Jeshua and Joab, 2,818. The sons of Elam, 1,254. The sons of Zatub, 845. The sons of Zakkai, 760. The sons of Binui, 648. The sons of Bebai, 628. The sons of Azgad, 2,322. The sons of Adonikam, 667. The sons of Bigvai, 2,067. The sons of Adin, 655. The sons of Adar, namely Hezekiah, 98. The sons of Hashum, 328. The sons of Bezai, 324. The sons of Hariph, 112. The sons of Gibeon, 95. The men of Bethlehem and Netopha, 188. The men of Anatoth, 128. The men of Beth Asmaveth, 42. The men of Kiriath Jearim, Kephira, and Beeroth, 743. The men of Ramah and Geba, 621. The men of Michmas, 122. The men of Bethel and Ai, 123. The men of the other Nebo, 52. The sons of the other Elam, 1,254. The sons of Haram, 320. The sons of Jericho, 345. The sons of Lod, Hadid, and Ono. That's a great name to have, isn't it? Ono. 721. What do you name your son when he's born? Oh, no. Just thought that was funny. The sons of, maybe leave my place. Where was it? My eyes are watering now, too. 38. The sons of Sena, 3,930. The priests, the sons of Jedediah, namely the house of Jeshua, 973. The sons of Emer, 1,052. The sons of Pashur, 1,247. Sons of Harim, 1,017. The Levites, the sons of Jeshua, namely of Kadmiel. The sons of Hadavah, the singers, and the sons of Asaph, 148. The gatekeepers, the sons of Shalem, the sons of Ater, the sons of Talmon, the sons of Akub, the sons of Hattiah, the sons of Shobai, 138. Temple servants, the sons of Ziha, the sons of Hasupha, the sons of Tabioth, the sons of Keros, the sons of Sia, the sons of Paddan, the sons of Lebanon, the sons of Hagabah, the sons of Shalmai, the sons of Hanan, the sons of Gidel, the sons of Gehar, the sons of Reah, the sons of Rezin, the sons of Nekoda, the sons of Gezim, the sons of Uzzah, the sons of Paseah, the sons of Bezai, the sons of Manim, the sons of Nephushim, the sons of Bakbuk, the sons of Hakupha, the sons of Harhur, that's a good one too, the sons of Bazlith, the sons of Mahida, the sons of Harsha, the sons of Barkos, the sons of Sisera, the sons of Tema, the sons of Nesiah, the sons of Hatipha, the sons of Solomon's servants, the sons of Sotai, the sons of Sophareth, the sons of Perida, the sons of Jalah, the sons of Darkon, the sons of Giddel, the sons of Shephatiah, the sons of Hatil, the sons of Pokereth Hazabaim, that's the best one yet. The sons of Ammon, all the temple servants, and the sons of Solomon's servants were 392. The following were those who came up from Tel Malah, Tel Harshar, Kerib, Adon, and Emer, but they could not prove their fathers' houses, nor their descent, whether they belonged to Israel. The sons of Delaiah, the sons of Tobiah, the sons of Nekoda, 642. Also the priest, the sons of Hobiah, the sons of Hakos, the sons of Barzillai, who had taken a wife of the daughters of Barzillai the Gileadite, and was called by their name. These sought their registration among those enrolled in the genealogy, but it was not found there, so they were excluded from the priesthood as unclean. The governor told them that they were not to partake of the most holy food until a priest with Urim and Thummim should arise. The whole assembly together was 42,360. Besides their male and female servants, of whom were 7,337, they had 245 singers, male and female. Their horses were 736, their mules 245, their camels 435, and their donkeys 6,720. Now some of the heads of fathers' houses gave to the work. The governor gave to the treasury 1,000 derricks of gold, 50 basins, 30 priest garments, and 500 minas of silver. And some of the heads of the fathers of houses gave into the treasury of the work 20,000 derricks of gold, 2,200 minas of silver, and what was the rest of the people gave was 20,000 derricks of gold, 2,000 minas of silver, and 67 priest garments. So the priests, the Levites, the gatekeepers, the singers, some of the people and the temple servants, and all Israel lived in their towns, and when the 7th month had come, the people of Israel were in their towns. Okay? No. One time was enough. My eyes are not young enough to do that 2 times in a row, okay? Or 2 times in a lifetime. My word. My goodness. I need new prescriptions. Okay. So, what is the importance of this chapter? Let's walk back through it and make some observations, okay? So I want you to see this is pretty significant. It's not just names. So Nehemiah he says in verse 5, "Then God put it into my heart to assemble the nobles and the officials and the people to be enrolled by genealogy." Now, earlier on in Israel's history, what Nehemiah is doing here is frowned on by God, sort of taking a census of sorts. In that instance, how it's happened before, if you read the text, it was something that Satan was doing, right? Here, Nehemiah is specific. God is telling me to do this. God's burdening my heart to do this. This is something I'm doing at the direction of God. So God put it in my heart to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the people to be enrolled by genealogy. And what does he use to do that? I found the book, the genealogy of those who came up at the first, and I found written in it. So remember the problem. They got to repopulate the city. Who can do that? People who are actually a part of the people of God. And so he's taking the genealogy that Ezra, in Ezra 5, so actually this exact list is mentioned twice in the Bible. So it is listed for us 2 times. First in Ezra 5, that's where it originated from. Ezra made this list. So Nehemiah takes this genealogy. He's going to compare it to who they have with them, where they're living, where they need to go, and whether or not they are a part of the people of God, and making sure the city is repopulated and people that are there are supposed to be there. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So that's his goal. That's the purpose. That's what God's put in his heart to do. And this genealogy includes leaders and laypersons, priests, Levites. We just saw the whole gamut of people that it includes. So I want to walk you through the rest of the text, and I want to make a few observations. And the main one that I want to begin with is this: the place of God exists for the people of God. That's the main purpose of these names and what's happening in chapter 7, is to remind us that the place of God exists for people of God. What good is a rebuilt city with a rebuilt temple with rebuilt walls if the people of God aren't there? It's not good at all. The people of God are served by the place of God. The place of God exists for the people of God. Look at, you have to turn there, but Revelation chapter 21, verse 9 and 11 says, "Then came one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues, and spoke to me, saying, 'Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb.' And he carried me away in the spirit to a great high mountain, and showed me the holy city Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God, having the glory of God, its radiance like a most rare jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal." So John says, an angel came to him and spoke and said, "I'm going to show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." We understand that to be the people of God. That's the redeemed people of God. So I'm going to show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And then he carries me away in the spirit to a great high mountain, and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. Same thing. The bride and the city are inseparable. You can't just have a city and not have a bride, and you can't just have a bride and not have a city. The people of God have a place, the place of God, where they're to worship the glory of God in His presence. And so the place always serves the people. Here's what you have to remember. Never, as a church, never get those reversed. Never begin to think that the people of God serve the place of God. When you have the thinking that the people of God serve the place of God, you're on a dangerous road. The place and programs and preferences always serve the people. The people that are presently a part of the people of God, and the people that one day we hope will be a part of the people of God. So the place always serves the people. And everything that we do in this place serves the ministry to the people of God. The people never serve the place. Here's what I've learned. When place, programs, preferences supplant the people of God in her ministry, before long, there will not be a people of God in that place. You see, it dots the landscape of our country. Churches that got these two things out of order, the place of God began serving the people of God, and not long later, there wasn't a people of God in that place. Because God always intends for the place to serve the people and the ministry that God has called them to pursue. Number two. Now, not only does this passage teaches about the place of God existing for the people of God, but secondly, it reminds us that the people of God are important to God. The people of God are important to God. Begin at verse 5. Then God put it in my heart to assemble the nobles, the officials, the people to be enrolled by genealogy, and I found the book of the genealogy of those who came up at the first, and then he finds written in all these names. So again, we talked about 2 Timothy 3:16. All Scripture is inspired by God. It's good, it's profitable, correction, training in righteousness, that the man of God may be thoroughly equipped for all that God's called us to. So how is it that these names do that? They remind us that the people of God are indeed important to God. And when you look at these names in verses 8 through 38, we read them again. We're not going to read them again, but we read them before. And when you look at these names, you may be tempted, first of all, to, as you start out and you see the names of Zerubbabel and Jeshua and Nehemiah, and as you get down further to the priests being mentioned and Solomon's servants, you may be tempted to think, well, of course, those people are important to God. I mean, look what they do. Look what their responsibilities. Look at their function. I mean, this is Nehemiah. This is Zerubbabel. Of course, those people matter to God. But who in the world is, oh no? Who is Bethel? Who is Bezai? Who is Sina? Harim? Who are these people? They're people that God never forgot. They're people that God saw what they did, saw their faithfulness to do what a lot of people refuse to do, and that was go back home. These people did. They had faith. They sacrificed. They took the risk. They left what had been familiar to them to go back to what many of them had never known at all, to a city that had nowhere to live in. No houses had been built. It was all just rubble, and they stepped out and they went there. One pastor said of this verse, he says, I want you to know that these are normal, regular, average people. But their names are in the Bible because God cares for them and God is honoring them. These names are here because God saw their sacrifice, saw their faithfulness, said, you know what? I'm not only going to put their names once in the Bible, I'm going to put this list twice in the Bible so that everyone knows for eternity and for all these thousands of years now that these people God remembered. These people are people God wanted to honor their faithfulness, to do what God had called them to do. And it's the same with you and I. Matthew 10:29, Jesus said, are not two sparrows sold for a penny, and not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. But even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. God says there's not a bird. Two of them aren't even worth a penny. but not one of them hits the ground without God knowing. And if God takes note of that, something so insignificant, you are of more value, infinitely. And never doubt that he takes note of you. He knows who you are. He knows your faithfulness. He sees your commitment. I love the beautiful praise song, He Knows My Name. Do you know that song? It says, I have a maker. He formed my heart. Before even time began, my life was in his hands. I have a father. He calls me his own. He'll never leave me no matter where I go. Remember the chorus? He knows my name. He knows my every thought. He sees each tear that falls, and he hears me when I call. These names are in this chapter because God knew their names. God knew who they were, what they had done, and this is God's way of saying, I will honor them. So have you ever thought of all these lists that we read of names in the Bible? So this is what I want you to think. Every time now when you're in your quiet time having your devotion and you come to one of these lists, these long lists of names, take the time to read them. Because here's what God's reminding you of. I know you. I know your name. I know all that you've been through. I know all that you're going through. And I see your faithfulness. And I'm going to honor you. Hold on. I'm going to honor you. Number 3, not only do we see that the place of God exists for the people of God and the people of God are important to God, but thirdly, the people of God are defined by God. The people of God are defined by God. Jump to verse 61. Verse 61, the following were those who came up from Tel Melah, Tel Hashar, Kerub, Adon, and Emer. But they could not prove their fathers' houses nor their descent, whether they belonged to Israel. It gives you a list of names. Verse 64, these sought their registration among those enrolled in the genealogies, but it was not found in there, so they were excluded from the priesthood as unclean. The governor told them that they were not to partake of the most holy food until a priest with Urim and Thummim should arise. So here you have a list of people, and what's going on is essentially, as they're checking the genealogies, basically they can't find their birth certificate. They can't prove that they're actually a part of the people of God. And there's some who even fall in the category of a priest, and they can't really prove yet who they are, about their heritage, their ethnicity, their belonging to Israel. And so the governor says, until we can figure this out, you can't even have access to basically it's a part of your income, the part of the holy food that was to be set aside for them. And you can't do that until we can get a priest who has the Urim and the Thummim, which were, this is weird, these stones that were in the breastplate of the high priest. And for sort of simple yes or no kind of decisions that the people of God weren't quite sure how to make, they would consult the priest, and they would use these stones in some way or some measure to let them know what God's will was. Okay, so that's basically he's saying, until we get this back implemented and we can decide this way, we're not going to right now include you into this list, into the people of God, because the people of God are defined by God. Deuteronomy 7 verse 6 says this, for you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his treasured possession out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. It was not because you were more in number than any of the other people that the Lord set his love on you and chose you, for you were fewest of all peoples, but it was because the Lord loves you and is keeping the oath that he swore to your fathers, that the Lord has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. God defined who his people was in the Old Testament. There was, part of that was ethnicity, but it also included Gentiles who converted to the one true God, who then apply the mark of the covenant, which is circumcision. And so God defined who his people was, and they didn't get to define that themselves. God set those parameters. Romans 2:28 says, "For no one is a Jew who is merely one outwardly, nor is circumcision outward and physical, but a Jew is one inwardly, and circumcision is a matter of the heart, by the Spirit, not by the letter. His praise is not from man, but from God." So it's not just about what's on the outside, not just about ethnicity. It never really was, in a sense. It's about a new circumcised heart. 1 Peter 2:9 says, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." There are people who are a part of the people of God, and there are people who are not a part of the people of God. And the difference is the gospel. What defines who the people of God are is their faith and trust in the good news of Jesus. That's how you become a part of the people of God. Is by doing the very things that Revelation says. Revelation 22 verse 15 says, "Outside are the dogs and sorcerers and the sexually immoral and murderers and idolaters and everyone who loves and practices falsehood." Revelation 21:8, "But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, as for murderers, the sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death." So those are those who are outside. So how do you get inside? Verse 14 to chapter 22. "Blessed are those who wash their robes, so that they may have the right to the tree of life, that they may enter the city by the gates." Revelation 7:14, "They have washed their robes and made them white with the blood of the Lamb." You become insiders, having previously been outsiders, by taking off the garments of your sin and your unrighteousness, and by faith believing in the shed blood of Jesus Christ, clothing yourselves with his bloody garments that give you pristine and wonderful righteous garments, his righteousness, and then that is what enables us to be a part of the people of God. And God defines who that people is. So here's the truth about your life and my life. Every person in our life, every person that we interact with, in our sphere of influence, stranger at Walmart, whoever it may be, everyone in this building, everyone in your life is either in one of two categories. They're either part of the people of God or they're outside the people of God. And if they're outside the people of God, what did we just say their fate is? Their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. That's how we should view every person in our life. Family, acquaintances, strangers, person that delivers our food, the person that rings us up at Walmart. They're either part of the people of God or they're not a part of the people of God. And God defines who that is, and how he has defined it is by believing in Jesus, his Son. And our goal, our purpose, is through our faithful witness of speaking and sharing the gospel to see as many people make that transfer from not a part of the people of God to being a part of the people of God. From the domain of darkness, transferred into his marvelous light. So the people of God are defined by God. Fourth, notice also in verses 70 through 72, the people of God give to God. The people of God give to God. Now, some of the heads of the fathers' houses gave to the work. See, the governor gave. Some of the heads of the fathers' houses gave into the treasury of the work. And the rest of the people gave. So you have this whole gamut of people that are giving. Giving to the work of God, giving to the house of God, giving to the purpose of God. And why does God put that in there? He puts that in there, number one, honor them. These are people who gave, people who sacrificed. But he does it also to motivate the present generation. Look at how your ancestors gave. Look at what they did. Look at sacrifices they made. Look at how uncomfortable it was. Look what they had to say no to so they could say yes to what God wanted them to do. And it's in there to spur the coming generations on to give like those before them gave. To sacrifice like those before them sacrificed. And lastly, this is where I want to spend the rest of our time. The people of God, here's what this passage teaches us. The people of God are redeemed by God. The people of God are redeemed by God. Jump back to verse 6. These were the people of the province who came up out of the captivity of those exiles whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried into exile. There are two truths in that verse that we just read. One is implicit and one is explicit. So one is there in plain sight and one is there and not as plain of sight. So let's deal with the implicit truth first in that verse 6. These were the people of the province who came up out of the captivity of those exiles whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried into exile. That's the implicit truth that teaches us something about God, something very important about God. In 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 15, the Lord, the God of their fathers, sent persistently to them by his messengers because he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they kept mocking the messengers of God, despising his words, scoffing at his prophets, until the wrath of the Lord rose against his people, until there was no remedy. Therefore, he brought up against them the king of the Chaldeans, who killed their young men with the sword in the house of their sanctuary, and had no compassion on young man or virgin, old man or aged. He gave them all into his hand, and all the vessels of the house of God, great and small, and the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king, and his princes, and all these he brought to Babylon. And they burned the house of God, and broke down the wall of Jerusalem, and burned all its palaces with fire, and destroyed all its precious vessels. He took into exile in Babylon those who had escaped from the sword, and they became servants to him and to his sons until the establishment of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed its Sabbaths. All the days it lay desolate, it kept Sabbath until to fulfill 70 years. So here's what it's telling us about God in verse 6, in conjunction with 2 Chronicles 36, that God keeps his word when he says, my wrath is coming. When God says, I'm going to judge those who rebel against me, this is what verse 6 is reminding us of. His people did indeed go into captivity just like God had promised, as an instrument of his judgment and his wrath. But notice also what it says in verse 6. These were the people of the province who came up out of captivity. That's the explicit truth there about God. 2 Chronicles, again, chapter 36, continuing on to verse 22. It says that God will bring them up out of their captivity by the hand of Cyrus. We talked about that back in Ezra. And that's exactly what God did. God was faithful to redeem his people, to bring them out of their captivity. And so when we read chapter 7, all these names are a testimony to God's redemption. These are people God was faithful to redeem and deliver out of captivity back to the land of promise. These people in chapter 7, here's the important, these are the most important people in the world at that time. They're the most important people on the planet. Though the world around them may think them nothing. Why? Because they are the next link in this unbreakable chain to get to Jesus. If they're not there, there's no Jesus coming. If they're not preserved, if they're not redeemed, if they're not rescued, we're not rescued. Because they, as we'll see in just a moment, they are the next step in God's plan of redemption to get to Jesus so that you and I could be redeemed. I want you to see this, so I don't want you to think I'm just making this up, okay? In Matthew chapter 1, verse 12. Everyone knows where Matthew is, so turn there real quick. Matthew 1, verse 12. Matthew 1, this list of genealogy of Jesus. Really cool thing about Matthew 1 that you may have never known, that when I figured it out, it was so cool. But you have these three lists of 14 generations, 14, 14, 14. Guess what the number 14 means in Hebrew? King. So here you have Matthew 1, and this is what the Holy Spirit's saying. King, king, king. This is the king. And the king's genealogy, chapter 1, verse 12, and after the deportation to Babylon, Jeconiah was the father of Shealtiel, and Shealtiel the father of who? Zerubbabel. Remember him back in chapter 7, verse 7, verse 8. He is one of those sort of important people that's listed in that list of names. And then if you jump down to the end of chapter 1 of Matthew, as it gets to the end of the genealogy, and Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called Christ. Zerubbabel. He's the link. Eventually someone from his lineage is going to carry that promise from God. When we read through all those names, there's something missing. There's someone missing in those lists of names in chapter 7. We've seen Levites and servants and Solomon's servants and gatekeepers and governors. What was it? There's no king in chapter 7. There's nobody there who's king. But if those people in chapter 7 don't exist, the king never comes. This chapter 7 is God telling us the king is coming. And I have to preserve these people and all these names to remind you that I am faithful. I am faithful to my promises to redeem you from all darkness. And if you'll just hold on, he's coming. All Scripture is inspired by God and is profitable for God's people in our walk with him. Any questions, any comments you want to make before we close in prayer?